Hey everyone out there, welcome to What's Your Point Overtime, where there's, I like to call it value added deluxe. All right, we were talking about gender dysphoria, how schools should handle it when kids are expressing that situation. Not everybody got to talk here. Charles, any thoughts?
I think I should tell the parents. I don't know. I feel like there's really, I didn't get away with much in high school or middle school without my parents being notified, and that probably helped. I don't think I was destined to be a bad kid anyway, but I think it probably helped. And Jonathan's point, Jonathan Sines from Texas Values was speaking before, saying that schools have counselors. Not all of them. They don't. And so I don't know what that middle road is, but I do think that parents, save for cases of abuse and things like we mentioned, should be involved in those conversations.
Yeah, I said in the segment tonight, I said, are we going to have perfect outcomes every time that there's full disclosure? No. But, that's not the school's job. That's not the school's job, but I don't know. I know what my job is, and that's to parent my kid as effectively as I can. And if I don't have information, now I would assume that most parents have some inkling of what's going on. Mm-hmm. And if they don't, then they need to check themselves because they're not paying attention. Bill, any thoughts here?
So I talked to a friend of mine, somebody that you know, that had a child that transitioned. He's now, I think, 23 or something. And she's very much opposed to the Katie rule. And so I listened to her to try to hear what her objections were to it. And a lot of it is based on the fact that she believes that most parents don't handle this very well. And I said, well, but you're saying you're going to turn it over to teachers, and there's an implicit bias in people that are opposed to this that parents are going to do a bad job at handling it. And I don't think that's a fair assumption. I'm sure some will handle it poorly, some will handle it great, but the parent is in charge of raising the child. She did point out this, though, I thought was interesting. Because I brought up and I said, well, let me ask you, if the school knew your kids were using drugs or depressed or any of that, wouldn't you want them to tell you that? And she goes, yes, but this rule just covers transgender. It doesn't cover anything else. And she says, so if we're really being serious that we need to disclose, then we need a rule that discloses everything. So I thought that was an interesting point. It does look like it's targeted at that community, but it does raise the much bigger issue about, and this rule creates an affirmative duty on the parent to inform. And do we really want the parent, do we want the teachers to be under that affirmative duty for everything that they hear going on in a classroom? I don't know. I think Paul made the great point. It's a nuanced question that I'm not sure that there's an easy, quick answer to.
Well, and I in my comments tonight, I said, would we feel the right to know if a teacher got wind that my kid had an STD or was presenting an eating disorder or was clearly depressed or on some type of substance,
But the Katie rule does not require the parents to tell.
Is there a pre-existing?
I was going to say, don't you already have obligations as a teacher to report certain things?
Absolutely. Yes. So there are requirements
already in place. Now, one other thing, I want to quibble with one thing.
Law enforcement.
Okay. Can I quibble with one thing? When we say parents will handle badly, for most of us that means, a parent is being abusive. But for some people, they would say a parent handling badly is a parent who does not affirm a child's gender dysphoria. And so, we have to be really careful about how we define these terms, right? So if I'm a parent and I've been told my daughter is, 12 years old and she's telling school she wants to be a boy, and I'm saying that's not real, as a parent, I don't believe that you can decide what your sex is. You're born with a certain sex. Some people would say that that is handling it badly, right? But that's not abusive. So that we have this disagreement publicly, although I would say a majority of Americans, and this is borne out in the polls and studies, majority of Americans do not believe you can change your sex.
Correct.
So
no,
and Holly, in her case, she was talking about kids being kicked out of the house because they said this. That's what she was defining as behaving badly. So,
but
what Holly said is true.
Right?
If people feel if you just don't accept that, then you've handled it badly. When I was in school, you better not chew gum in class because your mama was gonna find out and you was gonna get your ass whooped. Yeah. When I had my gang in 6th grade. And Miss Williams called my mama and asked, did she know? I was like, I'm dead. I did not go home for hours. Yeah. My mama tore my ass up. She was like, you got a gang? I said, I need a gang. What you need a gang for in the 6th grade? I was like, Mama, you just don't understand. Things are different from when the olden days. Mind you, my mother was 30-something years old. Like, you old. You don't know. So I'm telling you, there's no way in hell I would want a teacher to know and I not know if my kid had this issue. But let me be clear, there was, if I had problems, I would tell my coach. And I knew my coach wouldn't tell nobody. I mean, my coach, my teachers had so much, that my kindergarten teacher came to my wedding. My 1st grade teacher came to my wedding. They had such an impact on my life. And for some kids, they come from some seriously unstable, situations at home, and you tell something that they've told you in private. I mean, where you gonna be when they getting the hell beat out of them that night for telling that such and such is going on? So Paul really had me. I was literally all the way on the tell the parents. Then when Paul just said, suppose there's an abusive situation at the house that ends up getting this kid killed or something. I mean, it's a double-edged sword, and everybody's gonna handle it differently. But something like Bill said, if they would have put other things in there, I would have felt it was they should have added something in there other than just transgender. That I mean, seriously, that to make it seem like they weren't targeting just this one thing. But if your kid is not transgender, what if your kid is gay? Are they telling them if your kid is gay? Are they telling them, the parent may not know. Parent got to be blind as hell because I had a boy that was gay in pre-K. So I don't know how you don't know if you the parent, you do know. So
let me ask you this question. So getting back to what the teachers currently have the legal obligation to disclose. Now I understand that if there's abuse, they got to obligate to report to law enforcement, right? Correct. But let's say if the kid is indicating signs of severe depression, does the teacher have a legal obligation to tell the parents or anybody else about that?
Legal obligation, I don't think so. I think what there are district requirements around that type of problem, but there really isn't a lot of law that speaks to those types of issues. But I do think that there could be a misunderstanding around what I'm supposed to keep private and what I'm allowed to or what I need to tell school administration. At the school administration level is typically where those decisions get made. I know that I've experienced teachers who've been aware of something happening at the home and they haven't disclosed to school administration. And when that happens, then almost always it's not a good thing.
Remember that guy out at the high school on the west side got fired over there? Remember that case a few years ago?
Yeah.
He knew about it and didn't disclose it, or at least that was the allegation. It was Sharpstown High School. Remember the very popular principal that got fired over that exact issue. Y'all
may not be aware, but Congressman Dan Crenshaw opined in Newsweek, and he's also got legislation which would federalize the ban on gender-affirming, altering medical care, i.e. hormones and or surgery. It would take away, I think, federal funding from any institution that was performing those procedures. Interesting statistic he had was that the number of diagnoses of gender dysphoria was like 140,000. It was like explosive number. He's kind of suggesting it's a cottage industry. And there's this normalization that's gone on.
Well, and young people, especially, these preteens, you're talking about a 12 to 14-year-old.
You don't know what the hell.
They make really bad decisions, right? Their brains are not fully developed. They are trying to figure out who they are, and if there's a trend, they're like to jump on it. When I was 12, we thought putting blue eyeshadow up to your eyebrows was cool, and I would have tattooed that on my face if I, had my way. But, they make bad decisions. And what Crenshaw hits on, and what we talked about in the Texas legislative session this year, with even Ashawn Theory making her speech about this, you're talking about permanently changing the bodies of young people, and it cannot be reversed. Regardless of what they say. And we're seeing some of these European nations that pioneered these procedures are backtracking. And they are backing away from this kind of intervention that is not affirming. It's you may be affirming something that's destructive. We don't affirm everything that a 12-year-old wants.
You can't buy a gun. You can't get a tattoo. You can't do this. You know, until you're 18. And to be clear, Crenshaw says after 18, you know, this is a free country.
Let me tell you what my friend told me about all this, just to give the other point of view. And I'm not saying I agree with this, but I think we need to have a discussion. Number one, the hormone drugs were actually developed for hormone disorders in very young children, and they were prescribed and used for years before there was any transgender issue at all. And so there's a use for those drugs that has nothing to do with this, and they've now been banned. And so there's a lot of doctors who are upset about that. The second thing is, it is impossible to really do a gender transition starting when you're 18, because the hormones have already done all this development. So if it's going to be done, it's got to be done in those,
but the
middle teen years.
Also develop your skeletal structure. They contribute to your brain development. They're not just your sexual reproductive organs. They affect everything. And so you're talking about
Hold
on here.
But those hormone drugs are prescribed for a lot of people that have nothing to do with transgender. It has to do with the hormone
and they
disorder.
know what the risks are that go along with that. And so now we're pretending there's no risk.
There are tremendous risks with developing those hormones too early in your development. That's what the drugs were originally developed for.
We only have one person on this panel who actually went to high school in this century. That would be you.
Damn.
Charles, any perspective you can give us?
You on the roll.
I'm going to do a survey about the average age of our audience out there. Greg's picking on us, folks.
You on the roll.
Help us out here.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's interesting because I graduated high school in 2008, and I do not recall ever in my high school, middle school, elementary school career of seeing someone go through this. What I do know is that we had a lot of kids starting in 8th grade. There was a girl who graduated with me who had a baby. I had probably 4, 5, 6, 7 kids throughout the course of high school who had babies. So like things were happening in this kind of like I don't know what you call it, sexual realm. But I never heard of this until it was Gen X getting to this age, and you see this massive explosion among the Gen Xers of you know, gender dysphoria, fluidity, and all these other things. But again, I go back to the point about, you know, needing to tell parents stuff. I mean, you know, there was a time I was smoking cigarettes outside of high school, watching the airplanes fly by. They snatched me up and called my parents. And like, I just feel like you need to notify parents. They are the ones who are in charge. My principal, Mr. S, he could have talked to me. I probably would have never done it again. But I think that having your parent involved is an important aspect of it.
For the record, I have a very close friend whose biological son transitioned, and she is absolutely convinced that she saved his life by helping her life now, and she's successfully living in another country. So I know, you know, look, I'm not in their shoes. And you know, and if we think that parents should have the right to do what's best for their kids, you know, us second guessing, you know, it's.
My friend says exactly. She said that she had a son that transitioned to a girl, and she says exactly the same thing, that the child would have committed suicide had she not stepped in. You know, I think she found it in a diary or something that the kid was writing about this and contemplating suicide, and so that's when she went off and started getting some professional help. I think the child was like 13 or 14 or something at the time. But she's convinced that she not gotten involved, that the kid would commit suicide.
Well, I had my son. Okay, my son was being bullied really bad at private school, a very expensive school, and I'd been out of town for like a month, and I got back, and we were at lunch, and he made a comment, and I'm not kidding y'all. It was like I looked at him first, and I was like, "What is wrong?" Well, it's not as bad. I said, "No, what's wrong?" And then he shared with me that this boy was bullying him. Now, I'm not lying to y'all. His mama could be watching right now. I was whooping her ass and flying my cousins down by my little nephews to beat his ass. I went to the school. I was finna kill that principal because they didn't tell me. They were like, oh, we were trying to handle it. I said, you don't handle nothing. This is mine. He belongs to me. I mean, when they brought the mama in with her son, I told him, I will end your life and your mama life about my child. I told my son, I said, you don't never hold nothing back from me. I got you. I got you. If I ain't got nobody, I got you. I was furious at that school because they had known he had been at that school since he was in pre-K. And I was like, how could you all, well, we were working, no, you don't get to work through it. I went to that class, the class the boy was in. I said, any of y'all come near my kid, call your mama, daddy, whoever. I'm not kidding. That'll be it for you. Don't touch my child. Don't come near. But the betrayal that I felt, but I couldn't pull him out because it was his last, they were going into the last year of school. But I'm telling you, I was upset. So, you know, as a parent, you have the right to know. You really have the right to know.
The default setting should be, in schools that are operating well, the default setting should be work with parents, bring them into the conversation, try to have a mediated conversation if you feel there might be an issue, provide resources, align the family with, here's some ideas that you could have, here's a counselor in the community, here's a counselor at the school to help your child with whatever issue they're dealing with, whether it be bullying or whether it be anything else, grades, drug abuse, all those things occur. Pregnancies happen all the time, and in large part because kids don't understand what they're getting themselves into, or what could cause pregnancy. And all of these are things that I think more conversations, more communication, more education is a solution. The problem happens to be is that wherever it doesn't go right, it goes very poorly.
Yep.
Yeah. And I think those are the things we're trying to control for.
I want to segue here real quickly into when we're sitting here at this time, well, let's say at the end of term next year, what's the litmus test to whether Mike Miles' leadership has been effective in the first year of state control? I mean, and is it too early? Is 1 year too early?
I think 1 year is probably too early, but it should be, we should see some markers at that point, at the end of the year. If they're moving to testing throughout the year, and so we see the benchmarks and we can see progress towards it, we should see some sort of result, I think, with the end of the year testing. I was a little disturbed to see some of the things that some of the teachers are complaining about in the new education system schools, complaining that they're no longer allowed to show a movie for an entire class period or a film. They're not allowed to, spend the first week of school doing these, getting to know you activities. And what Miles is asking the teachers to do is get right into the teaching and get into the content of what the students need to know. There's this mantra that we sometimes hear people say, well, we shouldn't have testing, we should just trust teachers. There's some great teachers. I think Paul's probably a fantastic teacher. Tomorrow's probably a fantastic teacher. There's some not great teachers. And it's an imperfect system, but you have to have some way to measure the success of what you're doing. And if you're not seeing the results that we would like to see, then you need to make some changes. It's not just whether or not, a particular child in, say, the 3rd ward is learning to read. We're talking about entire generations of young people. And we're talking about the risk of being hyperbolic, the future of this country. If we're not teaching kids in the schools these basic skills, reading, writing, basic math, what kind of future can we look towards?
I don't think that's hyperbolic. I mean, I wish we really believed that, that it was that kind of priority, that kind of priority, that the survival of our country or way of life depends on the success of our education system.
Well, it should. It absolutely should, because, I don't think the country, the nation, the states, or the counties, or the cities have looked at the impact of COVID on these kids, because you learn how to learn in kindergarten, 1st grade. So these kids are now 2nd, 3rd grade. They never learned how to learn because their mothers were not capable of teaching them that. So they are behind. But how many of you all at this panel think before Miles came, HISD was failing?
Depends on the school.
No. I'm saying on state.
Oh, well, yeah.
HISD was not failing. HISD had a B. They had many other places where they had Fs. The state did not take them over. So and even in schools that had been doing bad on the last testing, they improved before he took over.
Did.
So wait a minute, hold on. Let me finish.
All.
But if in a year these schools have declined again, he failed. He don't get another year. This is not your child. It's not my child. These are people's children. These are not test tubes. These are their lives. If he fails, he failed in a year.
But where was the accountability for Highland Heights Elementary School that failed? Hasn't achieved a passing rating since, what is it, 2011?
High School.
I mean, this is where
look,
was,
Holly, I agree with
HFT?
you. Let me tell you what Paul Castro said about the politicizing of HISD before he came. Let me tell you, when that group of Hispanic trustees went and tried to get Acevedo to come in and take this lady out, and they were not funding a lot of the black schools. And I had a friend of mine whose husband was an outstanding basketball coach at a predominantly Hispanic school. When the new principal came, he said, we are taking all our funding from this to soccer because the black kids play basketball, the Hispanic kids don't. It was so, the racial things that they were doing were unconscionable because these are children. These are, I mean, that political, it needed to end. I have no problem with that. I'm just saying Joe Blow, idiot Miles who came may not be the right solution. Okay, so, and I mean what I'm saying. I'm not taking it back. I was a teacher. I mean, these are people. Being a teacher is hard as hell. If Paul say I'm wrong, then he's a different kind of teacher because it's hard. You got 30-some different personalities coming from 30 different spaces that you got to get to come all on one accord so you can try to elevate everybody.
Part of it, I think my frustration, because I was not critical at the beginning. I'm still dancing on the line of being critical, but I think from watching it, part of my frustration is that there seems to be a lack of consideration for the need for buy-in from the folks who they are representing. And it might be because not being an elected board and not being a superintendent appointed by an elected board, they don't feel the need for the buy-in to that extent, but there needs to be that buy-in if you're going to have success. If you have the parents constantly against every single thing you're doing and not reinforcing what's going on in the school because they don't like these changes, you're not going to see the success. And I don't think that the administration yet, maybe they're probably working on it, and they need people, like you said, to kind of bridge that gap, need to work on building that buy-in and that community trust, because you don't have that 3 months in. And I think it's really apparent in these board meetings and with some of these concerns. And I think with some of the concerns, they probably would have gone away had there been, I don't know that the board has done a tour yet. I know they said they were scheduling it for the end of August or something, but it's like, come on, you got to get out there. The old board members are still doing like board meeting things with communities. Like, why are you guys not working with these people? Because that's what it's going to take for overall success. You can read through Destination 2030, and there's a lot of great stuff in there about what they want to do. But if you're not working with the parents and the folk and the stakeholders to try to get that buy-in and move the district forward, I don't see how that's going to happen.
Right here in this chair, Gary Pollin sat and talked about his clients who are criminal suspects, repeat offenders, and they were graduates of HISD, but were functionally illiterate. And, and I don't want to simplify things, but, if 60% of the kids, if the district works for 60% of the kids, but absolutely fails 40%, how do you turn that around? How do you turn that around? And what is the measure of acceptability?
But they don't even have night school anymore.
Is 40% acceptable?
Castro, do you remember when they had night school? They had night school. They should still be doing night school. It's no reason that they don't have night school anymore. You had night school because just like Paul said, and just like Charles said, you had girls that had babies. So because they had babies, they didn't have anybody to keep their kids, so they had to go to school in the evening when everybody was home and off work so they could catch up. They need to go back to having night school. Well, there's no reason they should.
Quite a number of schools that have daycare centers for the students.
I get that, but I'm just saying that you may have a kid who can't go there.
Okay.
Can I make a point about the ratings, though? And there's another lawsuit over the new way the TEA is going to rate districts and schools. Yes, Houston ISD got a B. It's a very large district, so they were able to kind of hide the low-performing campuses behind the high-performing campuses. And with when they give a passing academic grade, sometimes you still have, only 20% of the third graders reading on grade level. So there's a lot of kind of loosey-goosey grade assignments to these schools and districts that maybe didn't accurately convey.
But the state
what
graded
was
them,
happening.
not themselves.
No, I
what
agree.
are you talking
And
about?
There is something
it is
that's
being
being missed
changed.
in this, and that
Yes.
is there were about 17 schools that did not get a rating because of COVID. And so these are schools who had an F, but they were able to hold on to their non-rated status, and so they weren't reported and they weren't rolled up into that larger number.
Okay, control room, is it time for us to go? We're a little 30 seconds, final word.
1 in 3 Harris County adults has low functional literacy. So if we don't get that started, I went and Googled the Department of English Literacy Center that had it. So we have a lot of work to do in general in Harris County.
Exactly.
All right, hey, thanks you all for being here. Well, I love it. I get paid for this. All right.
Thank
Have
you
a great
all for
week,
tuning
everybody.
in.
Bye.